You are listening to Inside Voices on WNHHLP 103.5 FM.
Good morning, or good afternoon, everyone who's listening to Inside Voices this morning. My name is Georgia Goldburn. I am the director of Hope for New Haven, as well as the co-founder of Circle, who is really hosting and convening Inside Voices. I'm always thrilled to welcome my guests, and it is not just a quaint thing that I say, but I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome these two women from the Women's Business Development Council. And I had to look at it because I always want to call you Center, but you are actually the Women's Business Development Council, affectionately known as WBDC. And so we may refer to your organization as WBDC, or you may in the conversation. So just want our listeners and our audience to know when we are using that term. So we have here with us this morning Brenda Thickett. She is the Chief Operating Officer for the Women's Business Development Center, along with Sonique Solis, who is the Child Care Opportunity Fund Program Lead. And you guys are here to talk about a wonderful opportunity that is now available to childcare providers across the state. And that is the childcare grants that you have been managing on behalf of the Office of Early Childhood for going on, is it 5 years now?
That's correct.
Absolutely. So welcome, ladies, welcome. And I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to introduce yourself. We're going to start with Brenda, and then we're going to do Sonique, only we're doing it alphabetical. So that I think is the fair way to do it. So Brenda, welcome.
Great. Thank you so much for having us today, Georgia. We're really excited to be here and share about WBDC with your listeners. So I'm Brenda Thickett. I'm WBDC's Chief Operating Officer, and I lead our development function and our programs and services across the state.
Thank you, Brenda. Sonique?
Perfect. Thank you again so much, Georgia, for having us this morning. My name is Sonique Solis, and I'm the Child Care Opportunity Fund Lead. I try to shorten it a little bit, a lot of words for our clients. So I'm the first point of contact for all things grant related for the child care providers across the state, as you mentioned, with WBDC.
Okay. So many of our listeners may not know what the WBDC is. So can you just give us a quick overview of the Women's Business Development Council, how long you guys have been in existence? Because you've been working with us for 5 years, and I'm pretty sure many of our providers across the state weren't necessarily familiar with your organization. So can you talk about WBDC?
Yes, absolutely. So we were founded in 1997, so we're, I think, about 28 years old now. And so we have been serving women, primarily women-owned businesses, but we also absolutely do serve men across the state of Connecticut for 28 years now. We have had the partnership with the Office of Early Childhood, focusing on child care clients for the last 5 years, but we have had programming and classes specific to child care businesses for over 15 years. So we have a lot of experience in supporting women-owned businesses. There are 4 pillars of our service. They are education, investment, connection, and advocacy. And it's really the first 2 areas where we spend most of our time on education and investment. On the education side, we have classes on every business topic, just about everything from how to start a business, how to do a business plan, how to do marketing, how to do QuickBooks. We also have classes that are specific to the childcare industry, like calculating your time space percentage or setting parent fees. How do you set pricing? So we have a whole bunch of classes, all of which, or most of which are, vast majority of which are free. And second, we have a team of business advisors that meet with clients one-on-one on any opportunity or challenge that they're facing. And we have experts in the childcare industry, Also experts in marketing, in accounting, in access to capital, so a whole range of experts. And meeting with them is also free. So that's our education pillar. The second one is invest, so getting capital into small businesses. And we do that through our grant programs, which we have some focused only on the childcare industry, and then another series of programs that are open to other businesses, which we'll go into in a bit more detail. But we also support clients to get access to capital from other sources as well, bank loans, as well as other grants and other sources of capital. Then the third pillar is our connect pillar, which is connecting women-owned businesses with each other and with the broader community. So we organize networking events and things like that to bring clients together. And then finally is our advocate pillar, advocating for women-owned businesses across the state. Every year we hold Women-Owned Business Day in the Capitol, where we bring a bunch of women business owners to meet with legislators at the state level. So that's a quick summary of our services.
Brenda, I have to say I just learned something just now, and it should have made sense to me that this is something that you guys do. But until 5 years ago, I didn't realize that the WBDC worked with childcare providers. And I think that's an important thing for people to know, that there's real expertise that's living in WBDC, and we should have known, because the childcare businesses are primarily women-led.
Yes.
So it would stand to reason that, of course, you can be working with childcare providers. But
Yeah.
you all entered this space during the pandemic, and can you talk about how that came about? Again, you shared that you've been working with childcare providers, but you were brought on to take on a very specific role.
Yeah, absolutely. So it started, as you said, during the pandemic, when the governor, who in his wisdom, very quickly, I think it became very obvious, right, that if childcare providers couldn't stay open, that first responders, whether they were nurses, doctors, people working in grocery stores, the real frontline workers during the pandemic, wouldn't be able to do their jobs without childcare. And so we couldn't let childcare businesses close. But at the same time, parents were pulling kids out of childcare because they were afraid and they didn't want them to be exposed to COVID, right? And so if the childcare businesses were losing their children, they wouldn't be able to keep their doors open. And so the governor wanted to get stabilization grants, get money to these businesses quickly, so that they could remain open. And I think we all remember, the PPP came into existence very quickly, but we found across the board, childcare as well as non-childcare, that a lot of our clients couldn't access the PPP because they didn't have, whether it was the financial records or the separate bank account from their personal account, that they just couldn't access it. And so the work started by trying to get these stabilization grants to childcare businesses just to keep them open so that they could continue to operate. And then out of that grew the kind of realization and understanding of, these businesses need to be able, think of themselves as businesses and operate as businesses, and that there was a real need for business education for childcare providers. And so then our program, in collaboration with the Office of Early Childhood, came into existence, and we started providing specialized and focused support education to childcare providers, both in-home providers and center providers. And then the grant programs grew out of that, of recognizing the needs from childcare providers.
Brenda and Solis, I will tell you from the work that Circle was doing on the ground at the time with providers, we were keenly aware that many providers would not have been prepared to go through a process to access these funds. And as a matter of fact, when the pandemic hit, we were getting funded by Graustein, and we immediately reached out to them and say, we need to shift the way that this grant is going to work so we can bring on a business person. And that's how we actually got connected with Joseph Williams, who continues to serve as a business consultant. And I know you guys know Joe because you guys move in the same circle. And we knew that we had to position our providers for those PPP loans. And this is a shameless plug. And if you just allow me to just exalt my organization for the work that they did during the pandemic, but we got 100% of our providers through the PPP process. We worked with Webster Bank. We partnered very early with Webster Bank, and they supported 100% of our providers to get the PPP loan, and 100% of them to get those loans forgiven. So
That's
truly,
fantastic. Yeah.
we understood what you guys were being called in to do. So Sonique, I'm going to bring you in here. So talk about the specific childcare grant program that you guys now administer on behalf of the Office of Early Child Education.
Oh, certainly. And again, congrats on taking on that not small at all feat during that time. Okay, so we currently offer 3 grant programs, and I will go from the smallest to the largest. So for the startup program,
before we go into these, were these grant programs started at the onset of the when you guys were brought in at the pandemic, or did they evolve? If you and I don't know, I'm asking to be educated myself.
Sure. So my time at WBDC started during when the grant program started. So yes, that's a perfect question to ask. They did evolve with time. The grant programs will continue to evolve with time as more organizations and within our very small community here in Connecticut continue to offer the much needed financial support to the businesses in the state. So it started out more of a emergency, like instantaneous emergency funding during 2020 to address all those needs in the pandemic, and has since evolved. So again, to answer that question, they did start up more of a urgent emergency type grant, and since then now merged, or I should say transformed into 3 different grant programs. And that takes me into the grant programs now. So the startup grant that is for providers who are in the licensing process. So they're working with the Office of Early Childhood to obtain their credentials, CPR training, first aid, director certificate. They're in that licensing process, or they have already obtained their license but operating for less than a year. They would fall within the startup grant program. And so this is open to family homes, groups, and centers. Family homes are eligible to apply for up to $5,000, group homes up to $10,000, and center-based programs up to $25,000. This will cover any startup cost, right? We know it's very, very expensive to start up a childcare program, from the right cots to the right cribs to our business advisors teaching the providers that they need to start saving, again, for these oncoming emergency challenges that they will face, or perhaps learning how to pay themselves. A lot of providers are leading with their hearts and not necessarily the business hats, which is what, where WBDC comes in. So the startup grant, again, for all provider types, family homes, groups, and centers operating for less than a year, or they're still within that licensing step, those licensing steps with the OEC to become licensed. Then we move to our emergency facilities grant. This has evolved so much over the last 5 years. So you think in the name, as it mentions, facilities needs. We're thinking of the health and safety of the children within the programs. Whether a licensing inspector came in and there's an issue, or the local fire department pointed out something, or the health department pointed out anything that affects this program that may face the possibility of closing. They'll have this, they'll start the process by reaching out to us. Our business advisors will will walk them through the process, because a lot of times these emergency needs are way beyond the grants. So they can apply for up to $15,000. And this is up to 15 for all the program types. So family homes, groups, and centers have the opportunity to apply for up to $15,000 to help them with that facilities needs. So I try to stress as much. It says emergency facilities. So we try to help them before they even put in the hard work to determine if they are indeed experiencing an emergency.
So explain that a bit, because if the state comes in and says, which they often do, that you have to
unannounced.
Right. And you have to make this repair in under 2 weeks of something, because that's typically the time frame they give you is 2 weeks, regardless of what the issues are. So then how would you help a provider to determine that that facility repair need is an emergency? Because from our perspective, it's an emergency because the state is saying you got to fix this in 2 weeks. So explain a little bit more about that.
Sure. And again, I lean very much into the word partnership. So not only are we being notified by the provider, but the state themselves, right? The OEC themselves will say this provider is having a particular emergency need. Can you help them? And so most times I'll often reach out before the provider does. So in some instances, it could be that, and not very regularly, but it could be that we can help them understand their current budget, their current income, because the grant process does take about 6 weeks from start to finish for them to submit the application and for us to expedite that decision to pay them. So if they are awarded. So the business advisor could help that provider understand their current finances. How can you take care of this great emergency need in the meantime? Not that there is a guarantee that you will get this grant, because we want to fund everyone, correct? But we don't have all the funds in the world. But at the end of the day, the individuals with the most urgent need, we will work with them to expedite that process and get them the funding as soon as possible, whether it's in-person TA to get the information, because again, we have other hurdles of technology need and getting the information that we need from the provider. So when I say determine the emergency, I understand for providers, a lot of things are emergencies, right? But from a business perspective, there are overhead and maintenance costs that, had those been taken care of during, proper budgeting and so on, would not have turned into an emergency. But most cases, we are able to determine right off the bat if it is that matches this particular grant program. Otherwise, we will help the providers figure out whether it's a credit card or a business line of credit or something to help take care of that need that they have. But typically from a phone call, we would be able to determine if they are indeed having an emergency that matches this particular grant.
Okay. And then the other grant?
And the other grant is the expansion grant. Okay. So the expansion grant is for our providers, again, all provider types that are looking to expand their license capacity. So they're increasing their enrollment by 3 or more children. And so you have like family homes who are moving to a group type program, or a group that is moving into a larger commercial space, or a center-based program that may have a facility that had a gross motor room that they're trying to turn into an infant toddler. As we know, there's a shortage for that. So we have a lot more. We have a lot of demand across all grants, but primarily that expansion grant, you can apply for up to $25,000, and the award amount, if they are awarded, is based on their project type. So you'll have from centers to family homes that are being awarded anywhere from $5,000 up to the $25,000.
So we kind of buried the lead in our conversation, because we want to mention that these grants have now, there are timelines and deadlines for some of these grants. So either one, can you talk about for each of the different grants, what those, the windows are for application? And I know that there are different ones for the emergency facilities. So can you talk about those 3 grants and what the time frame is for people to apply?
Certainly. And again, I want to make sure that we continuously repeat, this is made possible through the partnership with the Office of Early Childhood. It is funded by the OEC. So the Startup and Expansion Grant, it's currently open. All our grants are currently open, but the deadline for the Startup and Expansion Grant is August 31st. And we do continue to have support for all applicants throughout the process. So you will get email invitations to say, come work with us during office hours and technical assistance to get those applications submitted. And then for the Emergency Facilities Grant, this is a rolling application that is open until October 31st. Or if we've exhausted the funds, we will communicate via email and on our website to all applicants that the application has closed. So again, Startup and Expansion is open until August 31st, and the Emergency Facilities Program will be open until August 31st or if funds are exhausted, that will be before.
Okay, so Brenda, you may be able to speak a little bit to this, or a little bit more to this. We just received, or in the past legislative session, we received bond funding. And I don't want you to make news, but if you want to make news, Brenda, certainly do. But we received bond funding of about $80 million for specifically for childcare facilities. I don't know how much funds you get for the emergency facilities fund. I don't know if you can share that. What has been allocated to those emergency facilities funds each year? How much? And are you expected to see money out of these bond fund facilities? I know this is a question out of left field, but that's where my mind is.
So it is out of left field, and
so I can
go ahead,
touch on it. So in regards to the bond funding, what we at this moment we don't have an update on how though that has been allocated, but I do know for our grant program we're allocated. We do the we've already allocated our funding for their grant programs for the next 2 years on what we will offer support with our providers. And that is not from the bond funding. That's just from the partnership with the OEC, Brenda. So I don't have updates on the bond funding. I know that there are probably other network or other partners that will be offering grant programs from that, but WBDC doesn't have an update on whether that is towards our emergency
out of left field. So,
okay. But that's okay. But that was exciting news. That was very exciting news that the entire state, even the nation, knew about. So,
no, it is really exciting.
And I want to dig a little bit deeper into this because you guys have allocated these funds for years, and so again, what are we seeing out there in terms of the needs of the providers? As these funds, these applications are coming in. I know you've been working with providers for about 15 years, but you have been charged with this, I was going to say ministry, and it is a ministry for these small childcare businesses. What have you seen in the landscape as you have? And you came in to do this work at a very interesting time. So can you talk about the landscape of what you're seeing in terms of who the providers are, where they are, and how that's shifting? Either one.
Yeah, do you want to speak to that, Sonique, or do you want me to take a first crack at it?
You can start.
Okay. Yeah, so I would say absolutely the landscape has changed. I think we have been, in our seats, so to speak, and I'm sure you've probably seen it in your seat as well, how it's changed. But I think, we are working with providers to bring up their level of financial knowledge. And I would say, honestly, we see this across all our WBDC clients that, whether they're doing yoga or running a bakery, they go into it because that's what they love. And the childcare providers go into it because they love taking care of children, not because they love understanding their profit and loss statement and thinking about their financials and setting their prices and all of that. And, we see that across the board in all of our clients. And I think, over the past 5 years that we have been working with providers to say, yes, you are wonderful childcare providers and you love these children and take amazing care of them, but you are also a businesswoman and you have to think about the business side of it. And that is really important too. And so I think we've seen, the providers really level up in terms of their, financial and business knowledge and understanding over time that we've been working with them.
And Sonique, has that been your experience as well?
Yes, and I want to say that it does warm my heart when I see the providers who have been in the space for 15 plus years say that, it would have been not that the knowledge was not available or that WBDC wasn't available 15 years ago, but their main focus was caring for the child. Now they understand the focus, the education, the financial education, the automation of it all, which, allows them to focus on caring for the child. But it also makes sense that, in the journey that you had with Webster Bank to have all these individuals go through the PPP process, had they focused a little bit more on business, then that journey would have been easier, not only for them, but also for you, walking them through that. So I think providers are now, especially in the startup phase, whether it's a family home or a center, are a lot more open now. They see it as a pro. Like, this is definitely a pro, not a con, of having WBDC as the business support while they're going through this journey of, a business owner and educating, being a pillar of our community. So I see a lot more willingness to learn more about the business perspective, the business hat, and understanding their numbers. Whether it's reluctantly, they do come around. And my soft spot is technology. So seeing providers having dedicated childcare management software and accounting for their business is definitely a big shift that I've seen in the last 5 years.
I completely agree, Sonique. And one other thing that really surprised me, but it probably shouldn't, when I first came to WBDC as an employee 5 years ago, was that when we do our client surveys every year, the thing that people get the most from us, or the thing that scores highest that they have gained since working with us, is confidence. Mm-hmm. And I'm a numbers person, right? That I'm all about, like, let's talk about your numbers. What's your profit? What's your revenues? How can we reduce expenses or change things? And all of that is super important. But I think what's even more important is the confidence that when someone works with us and they learn more about their business, then, that makes them think about it in a different way and gives them more confidence as they move forward with their business. And especially with our grant programs, for many of them, it's the first external capital that they are receiving in their business, especially for the startup grants. And that really builds their confidence that someone else believes in their business enough to give them money is a really powerful thing. And so that in itself is also really important. And, again, it's something that I tend to, like, not that it's obviously very important, but, I don't always think of that first. And that really, really matters.
It's interesting.
And I want to add to, sorry, I just want to add to quickly that, Georgia, your question was about the grants evolving over time. And we encourage our clients to give us feedback, and also our community partners, that, even our application process has changed over time. And one of the things that I mentioned in our information sessions is, it seems daunting if this is the first time you're ever seeing this, right? A lot of people don't understand the grant process and why do we have to answer all these questions? And, when I break it down to say, if you've applied for one of our expansion grants, this is essentially like a very quick summary of a business plan. And we explain to them that this is similar to other processes of applying for other funding, whether it's through another organization or through traditional banking. Then the light bulb sort of goes off, right? They're like, wait a minute, I can have the opportunity to apply for more funds. So just leaning to what Brenda said, once they understand that this is only helping them to access more capital or understanding their business more, we see that they're like, oh, and now I'm confident to get an SBA loan or a loan from Webster or a loan from, their local community bank. So that's one of the things that I lead with in our information sessions. This is helping you beyond the WBDC grant program. Even if you are not successful in our grant application, this is giving you knowledge to go on to, look at other opportunities.
One of the things we saw, as we were all going through this journey together, and you guys kind of refer to it a bit, is the knowledge gap that was needed to go through some of these things. Because again, for many years, the childcare providers have been operating these small independent businesses without really any type of outside grant funding or loan funding. I think a lot of times people just put stuff on their credit card as well, for like emergency stuff or just to purchase stuff. So there was never really any outside accountability organization or entity that basically allowed them to think about their business as a business. So one of the things we saw when we working with our providers, and again, it ran the gamut as to what types of tools they were using, but we still had folks who were keeping receipts, like, paper receipts, and they were writing stuff down in books, or their business accounts were mixed in with their personal account. But the big thing that we found with all of our providers across the board is that they didn't know their numbers. They didn't know their numbers. They couldn't tell me, one of the things we do at Circle is we provide bulk purchasing for a classroom. And when we started off the process and we asked everybody, well, what do you need? Because we committed as an organization to provide supplies for the providers because they couldn't get it at the time. They couldn't tell us, the totality of plates and forks and cups and paper plates. What do they need each month to operate? And that extended beyond just knowing your supplies, not knowing the number that you need to charge in order to make the business profitable, or even just to make the business break even. And we found that, and I hear you guys allude into that or speak into that. So I know there has to be a growth, and because you've spoken to that growth. So where are you seeing the greatest growth in that knowledge gap with the providers that you're working with?
I mean, I know that, again, Georgia, what you're saying with the knowing their numbers and the biggest thing of separating that business from the personal expenses. We've said that so many times in all of our classes and all of our business advising sessions. But I want to say from the beginning of this journey, and go ahead, Brenda, to add more, is, paying themselves, like starting there, paying themselves was one of the most important steps they had to take. And understanding what comes with that, and also, employing someone, an assistant as a family home provider, and what that means, understanding the difference between a contractor and a W-2 employee, and in business insurance as well. So business insurance is also another area, understanding what they need to have as a business. And so I've seen those two where, increase in paying themselves, as well as, having the proper insurance that they need as a business owner. But I don't know if there's other areas, Brenda, that you'd like to add.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with both of you. And I think, we often see people, or, earlier, and we're seeing less of it now, but, managing their business very much on a cash basis of, do I have cash to pay that expense? Yes, I do. Then I will pay it out. But to your point, Georgia, not keeping track of what their numbers are. So they're not categorizing them. They can't look back and say, how much of I spent on supplies, or, my assistant, or whatever, over the last year. And so they can't manage the business more strategically if they don't know their numbers. And so we've seen huge progress on people, getting to know their numbers and keeping track of their expenses and their revenues. And then they can really manage the business instead of, kind of reacting to it and, spending money when they have it, but not taking a more strategic approach to it. So we've seen huge progress there.
I want to share with you one of our provider, when she came to us, and she wouldn't mind me sharing her story, but when she came to us, she was making a decision to shut her business down. And I said, don't do that. This is not the time to shut down childcare business. And we sat and we created an Excel spreadsheet, because at the time she didn't have, again, like either Peachtree or QuickBooks. And we created an Excel spreadsheet, and I told her, just go through all your bank statements and categorize all of the spending, right? And drop all of your personal spending into one category. It doesn't matter what it is, because again, the bank accounts were all mixed together, and just break out your business spending. Because the other thing that she wasn't doing as well is paying herself, because many of the providers didn't think that they can pay themselves. And once she broke out everything and she saw what was the personal expense versus the business expense, she realized, one, she needs to stop spending money on sneakers. And she needed to separate out that business account from her personal account so that she could see what the business was actually generating, and the fact that she could pay herself. And I think that clarity was so important for her. So I am pretty sure that you guys are seeing some of the same things. And I can assume that that's where that new confidence is coming from, because that was my experience with that provider. And from that confidence, where do you see providers going with this? What are some of the different thought process or decision making that they're doing as a result of that?
So I think, leaning into the confidence part of it, we've seen providers wanting to grow more, being more strategic about increasing not only their footprint, but, increasing enrollment as well. So we've had, I don't know if you know, I'm sure you know this, Georgia, but before the pandemic, we only had about a dozen group homes in the entire state of Connecticut. And now we've confidently seen providers taking that, making that decision of like purchasing a home or purchasing a commercial property to open micro centers or smaller group programs if they're not yet ready to operate a larger center. Mm-hmm. And so, moving on from paying themselves, that's hiring more staff and, wearing that business hat and being that business owner and employing more individuals and trying to fill that gap. We've seen the passion from a lot of our providers saying, now I understand my numbers. I have WBDC by my side. I'm ready to grow. Like, where's the next center? Where's my next location? So as they continue to build that confidence, we've seen if they're not yet either growing, they will connect other providers within their networks with WBDC, with other programs like Circle to grow their business and try to fill those slots that we have.
Brenda, do you want to weigh in on where you see the trend going in terms of how providers are thinking about their business?
Yeah, no, I would absolutely agree with everything Sonique just said, that, they're really getting that confidence, they're getting that knowledge, and then they're looking at, okay, where can I go next? And how do I think about running my business differently? Mm-hmm. And, to the point that you made on, commingling personal and business expense, that's one of the reasons, as Sonique said, that people are like, oh, this grant application, they were requiring so much. But part of it is we're trying to get people to use these healthy business practices of setting up a bank account in the name of the business and keeping that for their business, setting up their P&L and tracking their revenues and expenses so that they can have that knowledge to really run and manage their business in the most effective way and pay themselves and all those sort of things. So I would say we are absolutely seeing that businesses, bearing the fruit of all that work, which is amazing to see and exciting to see them think about, where do they go next and how can they grow and how can they open more childcare slots, which are so sorely needed in the state. And that's really the whole point.
Yeah. So going back to the grants that are now open, we talked about the fact that you mentioned that the emergency facilities fund, or let me just clarify. So those funds are committed. So if somebody has an emergency right now, would they be able to go to WBDC to apply for an emergency facility grant?
Yes.
Oh, they would be.
Yes,
Okay.
The application for the emergency facilities grant is open until October 31st. So unless we exhaust the funds, which hopefully we don't, because we want to help as many people as we can. But they have the opportunity to apply up until October 31st. And even if the deadline has passed, we're encouraging folks to still come to us, right? Figuring out where they are, what changes can they make, what temporary move can they make to solve this? We don't want their programs to close. So whether, like you mentioned, going to use the business credit card or going to their local bank to get a line of credit, we're here to help them figure that out. We don't want to say, this is a hard deadline, October 31st, you're having an emergency, don't call us. So we want to make sure that they're here, they understand we're here regardless, beyond the grants. But I also wanted to add a little bit more to, like what we're seeing, the shift. I'm very big on technology. I'm very proud of all the providers who are like, let me use QuickBooks. I want to use a childcare management software. I want to be, we have a lot of classes at WBDC around marketing, Google Business and having more of an online presence. I should say, highlight the providers who have now created that online footprint. You can find providers now, like the newer parents are all online and they're doing the social media and making sure that the business is, present online. So I just wanted to add that I've seen that growth in the past 5 years of folks not even being on Google. You can't find them outside of Facebook. And now they're definitely leaning into those marketing plans and making sure they have the financial management software. We love QuickBooks, but if they're choosing something else like FreshBooks or Wave or whatever it is, as long as they're separating their business from personal, that's great.
Right.
Really.
So,
And to Sonique's point as well, yes, we are giving grants to the childcare industry, but, we're doing so much more in terms of the education and the advising that, if someone doesn't know what QuickBooks is or what a profit and loss statement is, we have classes that will teach them that. And, all of the requirements for the grant, we have classes around that will teach you how to do that. So you can take a QuickBooks class, and you can also meet with one of our business advisors that will go through your QuickBooks with you line by line and answer any questions and make sure it's set up in the right way and help you understand what the data is that it's giving back to you once it totals everything up on all your expenses by category and all that sort of stuff. So as Sonique said, please come to us and our advisors as we can help you think through not just the grant, but more broadly, how can you manage around that emergency, or what are the other resources that you can draw on, or places that you can go, or how you could structure your business differently to get through this period where you have the emergency.
so Sonique, thank you, Brenda and Sonique, for that. I think it's important for folks to know, and but I want to circle back to a point that you just said. So beyond October 31st, what happens with these funds? Because I think it's important to understand the process. Is it that you're saying October 31st is when you would enter into a new contract with the OEC, or is it that those funds are exhausted and then what happens?
Oh, great question. So we are still in our contract even into 2026 with the OEC, but it's very important, and thank you. I don't know how I missed that. So our grant programs are offered twice per year.
Okay.
And once the grant programs close with the startup and expansion, August 31st, the emergency facilities, October 31st, we will then sort of fiscally wind down and then restart. There will be new grant opportunities again available in the first quarter of 2026. And we say winter 2026, but around January, February of the 2026, you'll have the opportunity to apply again. So if we have exhausted or closed that round, we're working with that particular provider to get, their ducks in a row, so to speak, for the next round to be open. But again, if you're facing an emergency, we don't want your program to close. So we do have also, one-off cases that may come from the OEC that says, we need to get this done beyond October 31st, at which point we'll lean to our senior management and stuff to how to figure that out. But again, the programs will become available again in 2026. So it's not the end of the road for folks.
Okay, good.
Yes.
So August 31st is when this fiscal year round ends for the expansion.
The startup and expansion.
Startup. And then October 31st is when this fiscal year ends for the emergency facilities. But if you're in an emergency, November.
Still reach out.
They'll reach out.
Yes.
And the emergency facilities grants are also evaluated and then paid out on a rolling basis.
Correct.
And as Sonique said, it's about 6 weeks from the time somebody applies until when they get their check. Whereas the other grants are evaluated as a round, so to speak.
So how long is that period for the emergency and the expansion and the startup? So 6 weeks for the emergency, but what about the startup and expansion?
So for startup and expansion, when the grant period closes on August 31st, the applications are evaluated the following week to determine if they're a fully complete application. At that point, I'm out there in the street saying, you need to, update this information, or this particular file can't be opened. Mm-hmm. Then we have 2 stages of reviews. So they're reviewed after they've met that completion status. And then I guess Brenda can also add to what I'm going to say next. Then our second stage of reviews goes through our review committee and for them to make a decision. So that's about 2 months. So September to October would be the entirety of the review process. And then folks will hear the final decision on their grants. I would say that the latest November 1st, and our grant awards, if they're awarded, gets paid electronically. So pretty quickly to them. And that's also been an improvement on our, we used to do checks. I know Brenda just mentioned checks, but we do our awards electronically by ACH. So again, 2 months, about 2 months for the reviews. And during the review process, we will reach out to the applicant saying, we noticed that you need a little bit more help on your projections, or your finances don't seem to be clear. have our business advisors help you offer some more clarity. So it's not the end of the road after you've submitted your application. We have support post the submission so that we can review your application. You hear feedback in real time. This wasn't as clear, so the reviewers are unable to make a decision, or you need to go back to the drawing board and improve on your projections in order for them to, we encourage you to apply next round, that sort of thing. So that 2-month window is all the reviews happen, and then you get a decision after. But we communicate throughout the process that you've moved on to stage 2 of the reviews. You'll get a personal phone call if you have not been awarded, and then our grant portal also shows the status of your application as well. But we have a review committee that will work tirelessly on the applications to make that, try to make a decision.
Right. And it's an external review committee as well. It's not WBDC staff members that many of whom will have worked with clients on their application. So it's an external review committee that is making the decisions on which ones get funded.
So from the time that the decision is made, how quickly do they get the money? Because I'm about how quickly
So
deposited.
I would say about 2 weeks. From, because we want to make sure, again, we're at WBDC, we want to make sure we communicate whether it's an approval or a denial. We'll reach out by email as well as by phone, discussing, more of what happened with the applications as folks have questions. And then the longest period is for the awardees to accept their award agreements and get all the documents back to us. And then our finance team is pretty quick on turnaround. So if someone takes more than 10 days or 2 weeks to get their information back to us, then, the payment would be delayed. But I would say collecting the necessary documents for their agreements, I would say takes about 2 weeks, 10 days.
Okay. We need to get you guys back here because there is so much more that we have to cover, and there's so much that I'm curious about in finding out about the numbers. But alas, we are almost at the end of our show. So in the last few minutes, can you talk to folks who are listening? What is the most important things if we are planning to go through this grant that they should know? First of all, I will share with my listeners that I did both grant application. I went into the portal to see both grant application, and it was easy peasy lemon squeezy. So shout out to WBDC for that, because when I go to talk to my providers, I want to make sure that I know what process they're going through. But what's the most important thing besides the fact that it's easy peasy lemon squeezy that they need to have ready before they go through this process?
Well, thanks again for having us, and we should definitely continue this conversation. I look forward to even joining one of your circle meetings as well to talk more about WBDC. That would be wonderful. What I would say is,
Sonique, we've been talking about that, and I have been negligent in connecting with you. We are off on holiday for the summer, but we get back up in September. So we would love to have you guys come and talk. But yes, definitely listen out for us.
And everyone's feedback is very, very important to us, clients and our partners alike. So I will jump in first on what they need to do. Brenda, be sure to jump in as well. So visit our website, read about the grants. If you think you are eligible or not eligible, reach out to us, send us an email, book a business advising session. That can be such a night and day to, your next step for the grant process. So book a business advising session sooner rather than later. I know a lot of folks wait until the last minute. The clock's running out on August 31st. So book that appointment, read through our website. Have a trusted advisor. Circle is a great partner, right? Or a family member that can help you through the process. What we think is easy may be a little bit hard for other folks, just a little intimidating on a business end. Just leaning into anyone in your circle, or with circle to apply for the application, to see where you fall within the grant application process. And we're here to help you manage your business. It's beyond the grants, right? We want to keep the networking and the business advising going.
Brenda, what is the advice that you would give to folks who are looking to apply? And can you just remind folks what the eligibility is as you are giving advice?
Okay, so eligibility for startup
Sorry,
folks.
I'm sorry, Brenda.
No, it's okay.
Brenda, I'm sorry, Sonique.
No, no, it's all
That's
good.
okay.
Answer
No,
it.
why don't you go ahead on the eligibility, Sonique, and then I'll jump in with my advice.
Perfect. So eligibility, startup folks, you're open and operating for less than a year, or you're becoming licensed, right? You're actively working with OEC to get your license. You fall within the startup grant category. If you have been in business for 2 years or more, profitable, and you are looking to expand for 3 or more children, again, that's the expansion grant. Those 2 grant programs are open August 1st to August 31st. If you are a childcare provider, childcare business, or educator in the state of Connecticut, and you're experiencing an emergency facilities need, you should reach out to us ASAP so you can speak to our advisor to evaluate. You have until October 31st to apply for that grant, or within that time frame that you're experiencing your emergency.
And Brenda?
Yeah, I will just echo what Sonique said, which is reach out to us. We are here to help you, and meeting with us is free. Our program is funded by the Office of Early Childhood, meaning that providers do not have to pay anything to meet with our expert business advisors. So please do reach out and come to us, whether you're thinking about starting a home-based business or a center, or you're in business. And no question is a stupid question. We've all had these questions, but if you don't know what QuickBooks is, we can explain it to you, and we will can explain it to you in a way that you can understand it. So don't be afraid to come to us. We can help you with every aspect of your business. And I think the other thing that is super important that we haven't talked about is that we also provide classes and the application and advising in Spanish. We have several native Spanish speakers on our team, both in the childcare team and then several others beyond. So I think we're up to 6 or 7, or maybe even getting close to 8 of our staff members that speak Spanish now. So we can provide services, both classes, advising, and grant applications in both English and Spanish. So please come and join us.
And I will share as well that your application online is in Spanish, and I did get a chance to switch, the language online and to look at the application. So it's very clear that you guys are hearing the feedback from the providers, and we are really grateful to have a team like Women's Business Development Center. See, I'm going back to center. Council.
Well, it did used to be center back when we had one location. So it's
Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Brenda, for bailing me out. For some reason, that is stuck in my head.
So for our first, I think, 10 years, we were the Women's Business Development Center. But then when we were looking to grow and add more locations, because now we're in Waterbury, Hartford, and Stamford, and then we had an office in New London, which we are working on reopening. So we will soon be back in New London, though our team is still working in New London. But when we were looking to grow, we thought, we're not a center, we're not a place. This is about all of these women working together and supporting each other and learning together and growing. And so we changed the name to a council.
When did you change your name?
I think it was 2010. So it's been about 15 years.
So Brenda, I don't have any excuse for why I'm calling you.
It's okay. You could have gone with it. It's all good.
And I just want to add one more plug. I just want to add one more plug to our childcare opportunity fund. We have our general opportunity fund, as Brenda mentioned. We have other grant programs, but for non-childcare, and we have to date awarded over $8.4 million in grants. That's over 787 grants. And we just want to encourage all those who are applying for the application, the grants right now, or thinking about applying, that you could be another one of our awardees. So just reach out to us, and we are here to help, and reach out to your partners as well. And then, we have an increase number of recipients. 64% of our awardees are people of color. And I think it's very important to point out as well. So I just wanted to let folks know it could be you next, getting an award and increasing the
Listen,
numbers of
I
child care
am
business.
planning to apply at some point, but that will have to be the perfect last word. I love to hear that women are doing well, that people of color are doing well, that childcare industry is doing well. So thank you all once again, Women's Business Development Council. Thank you, Brenda Thickett. Thank you, Solis, for being with us to talk about the childcare grant that are now open. Please make sure you put in your application. Thank you all, and thank you to my listeners for spending an hour with us.
You are listening to Inside Voices on WNHHLP 103.